All right. Welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification course for this large group that's here. And we appreciate you coming tonight. For all of you that are online too, it's great that you're here with us. And remember, if you're online right now, remember you can go to the drop-down menu. If you're using the phone app, you'll see, like Facebook, for instance, official Peaceful Solution, and you'll see the menu there at the top before you even get down to this screen, I believe, on live streaming, I think so. But nevertheless, you can find it on there. If you're on a laptop, it'll be up at the top there on the Peaceful Solution page. Excuse me. All right, so again, I'd like to thank you for coming. Bear with me on my chortling or choking or coughing, whatever you want to call it. We'll get through this. But for now, it is, if we can look at that overhead, it is time to be responsible. Time to be responsible. Now, I wanted to point something out. This is just a little personal thing that caught me when I'm looking at the word responsible or responsibility. If you kind of think response-able, right? Responsible, response-able, you got it? Okay, so response-able or responsibility, responsibility or responsibility, okay? Keep that thought in mind for a minute. Time to be responsible. And it's time for us to have the ability to even give a response when we're talking about responsibility. Got it? Just a little something there, you know, that struck me as I looked more at the word responsible. I thought response-able. You got to be able to give a response, you know. And so in that, I know Chris, he left off on page 77 in the first paragraph down around the point where it starts talking about consistently taking care of something and maintenance and so forth. And of course, had a few little personal stories to share with us, you know, just like washing the clothes. I don't know what I would do without a washing machine. I really don't. Though, when I was younger, I did live in a house that the only running water it had was when I ran out the door and got water from a spigot and ran back inside the house with it. That was the running water that we had. And you know, I'm really not that old. I'm kind of old, but not really that old, you know. I mean, most people did have running water in their house where you just go turn the faucet. You know, we had faucets too. They just didn't work at the time. So, but anyways, I was thinking about the people that he was talking about that wash clothes in like a bathtub or a bucket or something like that, and thought about that because I remember having to do that. And so it's great to have experienced some things that some would call possibly a hardship. Others choose to do it that way on their own, even though they could afford a washing machine and got the resources and the places to do it and so forth. So being responsible, like in that respect, being responsible to, if you go back to respect unit, you know, we talk about respecting ourselves and respecting others, and how can you respect anyone else until you respect yourself? And part of that, excuse me, part of that is respecting yourself by grooming and being prepared, being clean, and taking care of yourself through what you eat and so forth too. All of that is being respectful and responsible, okay? In fact, I wanted to read this before we really get started. Back in the character unit, when it talks about the different character traits, if you want to look at the overhead real quick, back in the character unit on page 17, talks about responsibility, honesty and responsibility. And to be responsible, you have to be honest too, so... But in responsible, it says, being responsible is another trait you should want to make part of your character. Absolutely. And being responsible, excuse me, if I were responsible enough, I would have had my phone off. or I could call the person that's calling and ask them why they're not in class. One of the two. But nevertheless, being responsible is another trait you should want to make part of your character. Being responsible means to be accountable and answerable for your actions. So, I do have a response for that, by the way, on that. Over the past several classes, I remember for sure William talking about, well, if I were doing what was on this page, I need to be that responsible too, and then Chris kind of alluded to something along those lines too. So that's the great thing about the Peaceful Solution. As we go through this, whether we're the teacher, a student, whatever the case is, you never stop learning. You'll always see something in there. I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years and going places and being together and teaching classes and staying in motorhomes and so forth in these trips that we take and all. And everyone has a responsibility to do a certain thing, but nevertheless, along the way, somewhere something kind of falls down, and we have to look at it and for instance, if I was the responsible party, I was the one that was supposed to take care of something and did not, then I need to leave myself a little bit of room to grow, not kick myself too hard, and set my mind in advance to do it better the next time. And that's what we do. And that's what all of us do. And that's what William and Chris both were alluding to when they were talking about these personal situations and so forth. So, it means being accountable and answerable for your actions. And you will be known as a reliable person, someone others can count on. Someone who is irresponsible is unreliable. I can add some more. Disrespectful, not practicing self-control. You name it. I mean, it kind of covers the entire gamut. For example, such a person is always late when you plan to meet them, and I know there's somebody in this room that's thinking about this right now. I say, well, okay, I'll be there in a minute, and he asked me right away, well, is that a David minute, or is that like a normal 60-second minute? And so I think about it for about 60 seconds, and I tell him, well, it's a David minute. It'll be a little bit longer than that, okay, so bear with me. Or they might not even show up at all. When they say they'll return something they borrow, they might return it damaged or in worse condition than when you lent it out, and usually they're late in returning it to you if they somehow don't lose it along the way. And this can leave you feeling frustrated and hesitant to ask this person to do something for you again, or even to loan them anything. That's right. If you're not responsible enough to take care of items and do what you're supposed to do with them and be respectful towards other people, then sooner or later people are going to start trusting you to do those things. And even though respect is given automatically, you have to earn trust. And to earn somebody's trust, you have to be responsible. You have to be showing some type of responsibility in your life for things that you've been assigned to do, or taking responsibility for something that's taking place. It was your responsibility. You fell down on the job. You take responsibility, determine better to do it next time. So there's many ways that responsibility comes into play. Responsible people are given more important duties because people know they can be counted on to do a job. They also receive more privileges. See that? Responsibility, privilege, they kind of go hand in hand. For instance, if you're responsible with your chores, you might be given permission to take on more jobs, allowing you to earn more money. Or because you were so responsible at babysitting your younger brother or sister, your parents might allow you to obtain something you desired for a long time. These are just a few of many valuable moral principles you have at your disposal. Strive to make them all a part of your moral character development. And remember this, basing your decision on facts, not emotions, I cannot stress that hard enough. There's many times, and myself included, where I've done these things and when I was mostly younger and growing, and as I started learning about the Peaceful Solution, I pushed these things aside. But when it comes to emotions, we have to be able to control those and not let our tongue wag with the emotions flowing out. Emotions are strong, and they there's anger, it's a secondary emotion. You get something else going on first. There's rage, there's disrespect goes along with it, and when you start raging at somebody and so forth. And you just have to remember not to let your tongue just be saying anything and everything and screaming at somebody and letting that emotion come through, because when it's all said and done, you're probably going to look back and say, man, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? And you might even be suffering some repercussions for whatever it is that was done. I mean, most assuredly, you would suffer some repercussions in your reputation as being a responsible, respectful, reliable person. So, that being said, let's, I didn't mean to get off too far on that, but it does all go hand in hand. Don't speak through your emotions. Think about what you're talking about. I did recently hear of a quote that was made that said, the reason your mouth is like right here on your face, it's between your heart and your mind. And so, it gives you the opportunity, it gives it an opportunity for that emotion to first go to the mind, and your mind calm it down and decide to deal with things logically and in a respectful manner, instead of just letting all that raw emotion out, okay? Reminds me of Abraham Lincoln when he was extremely mad at one of the generals in his army for not following instructions implicitly, and he felt that it caused the war to carry on longer than it should have, and he was livid. I mean, he was just ready to get this guy, and of course they didn't have phones back then, and he couldn't just get on a video chat with him and tell him he's fired or whatever. So what he did was he kind of got it out of his system and wrote it down, and he set that letter aside, and as it turned out, as time went on, he never did give that general that letter. As far as I know, he never terminated him, maybe next time he saw him or anything either. So kind of an interesting thing. And that's something that all of us can look at, that we need to control our tongues. Excuse me. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the book. So we'll be on page 77, but let's go ahead and look at procedure number 2 on lesson plan 5, page C. Lesson plan 5, page C, procedure 2, and Chris already read most of this, I think, but tell students that in today's lesson, they will learn how to maintain a responsible character. Have students turn to page 77 in their handbooks and read the introduction. It says to guide the class discussion by asking what are some other things not mentioned in the text that must be maintained. And the answers could vary, but includes a car, you got to change the oil and so forth, air filter and everything to keep it running. And he talked about houses. I remember Chris was talking about houses and how they can sit empty for a long time, not 3 or 6 months or something like that, but a long time, 5 or 10 years. And if they sit empty like that, there's going to be deterioration of that house beyond you could even imagine. And what causes it? He said that was one of the major mysteries. One of the major mysteries in the real estate market is what causes this thing. I mean, I have an idea about it, but it's not been proven to most people yet. But anyways, he talked about that, and then he told me a personal story too on about a house that was empty. But I remember that. I remember a house that was empty for a long time that my family owned, and by the time we checked it out and everything, it really deteriorated really bad. Excuse me. So we go on over to page 77. We'll finish this up, and then we'll come back to the next procedure, okay? All right, so Chris already covered down part of the ways. We'll just start out. We'll start out right there where it says most things in life need consistent care and attention in order for their value to be retained. So in value, when we're talking about value, we can talk about our values, our value system and everything, which means a lot to us. It's very important. It's something that you can't buy with gold, your values, which are formed over a lifetime. And as you get older and as you learn the piece of solution and we go through these classes and all, your values tend to change and shift to a more suitable value system, And in this case, it's talking about consistent care and attention in order for their value to be retained. And it's talking about both things, physical things and these things in our character too. But think about it, and they do this comparison. You don't have to take, or don't you have to take care of your belongings? I did the exact same thing he did that class. Don't you have to take care of your belongings? By treating them with care and putting them away after you use them, you prevent them from being lost or damaged. You also have to take care of yourself. This goes back to that respect. You can't bathe just once and be clean the rest of your life. I've known a few people that thought they could, but it doesn't work that way. Nor can you clean your room once and have it remain clean for years to come. Nor can you just wash dishes one time and expect your dishes to remain clean. I throw that in there for those of you that are in the know. So consistently take care of something in order to preserve its worth, called maintenance. Consistently taking care of something, just like the car, the oil filter, the air filter, the tires and everything. If you take care of it, it's gonna suit you well. It's gonna get you where you want to go, and so forth. And many things must be maintained, from your hygiene to your clothes. The list is endless. The point is, if you want to keep anything functioning and looking its best, you must take care of it. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I was laughing about a minute ago. All right, well, if you use dishes and you eat and you use dishes, of course, if they're paper and plastic, you could just throw them away. But if you're using glass or using glasses and dishes and spoons and forks that are made of metal or silver or gold, if you have it, whatever, after you use them, you do need to wash them, so they can be usable the next time. Now, I'm rather tall, and I don't like washing dishes. Most sinks that I've encountered are not really tall enough for me. Now, I know William is going to be laughing probably hysterically by now at that comment because, like I said, all of us have been in motorhomes and places where we had to stay for weeks at a time and so forth, and teaching class, and we all pitch in and do our part, and yes, I do get to put to practice my washing of dishes at that time. I do step on up and be responsible and take my part of the duties too. And I am very thankful that I have someone at home that steps up and does those duties on the washing of the dishes, because now, hey, I'll wake up early and throw a log on the fire or turn the heater on or something like that. I consider that my responsibility, and I'm glad that person considers washing dishes their responsibility. I can't tell you how thankful I am for that. So that's why I was kind of chuckling a little bit, and I'm sure the other guys are really they're probably on the ground right now cackling. But all right, so a responsible character, like so many other things in life, must also be maintained, for it too requires care. That is so true, man. Character, you don't just read the book, you don't just get it one time and say, oh, I got that, man. Hey, I'm great. I'll never rage at anybody again in my life. Oh boy, just say that and see what occurs. For it too requires care. If you drop your guard and allow yourself to be pressured into doing something that's wrong, you could end up embarrassing yourself, disappointing your parents, coworkers, friends, etc., or worse. And in the previous chapters, well, yeah, excuse me, or worse, someone shared an article. I think it might have been Chris. I think it was. He shared an article with me, and maybe some of the others out here, that consisted of there are now more suicides in the military than there are soldiers that have been lost in combat over a period of time. There's now more suicides than soldiers lost in combat, which is like amazing. So, of course, I'm not trying to say that there was something in their life that they had a problem with, but with proper counseling and everything, maybe things could have ended up differently. And when I say proper counseling, if only they were taught the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, I mean, it's just beyond compare with anything out there and any counselors out there. It's just unbelievable how it changes people's lives. In the previous chapters, you explored how avoiding risky behavior, being accountable for your actions, and managing your time all play important roles in the development of responsible character. In this chapter, you'll learn how to maintain responsible character by consistently making positive choices, by paying attention to the choices you make, and avoiding those decisions that could negatively change the course of your life. You are working at maintaining your responsible character. Let's turn over Lesson Plan 5, page D, if you have a teacher's manual. And if you'll look at, let's go back to Lesson Plan 5, page C, and look at procedure number 3. Procedure number 3 says to explain to students that it takes other positive character traits to maintain a responsible character. And ask students to name some. And if you're ever in the right venue where you can do that and you got some students sitting around and you got some time to share and everything, absolutely do that, because you get an idea of how the students are learning and so forth, and you're the teacher. Tell students that the ones they will focus on for this lesson are self-control and discipline. We'll at least get to the self-control part. I'm not sure we'll get to the discipline part. We might. But, those go hand in hand. And have students turn to the section, we're going over to the next page, Maintaining a Responsible Character, found on pages 78 through 80. And take turns reading the text. Emphasize that consistently making right choices to be responsible requires discipline. So I'd like to share with you one thing. We're going to get started there. Well, let's go ahead to the top of page 78. Excuse me. So maintaining a responsible character. Now, have you ever baked a cake? I mean, anybody in here? I mean, I see several hands going up that baked a cake. I don't know if any of you are really bakers or anything, but you probably baked a cake. I mean, whether it was something out of a box you just poured out and threw some eggs on and poured some milk in or water or something other like that, or whether you did it and know how to do it like from scratch. I know there's one person in this room that knows how to do it from scratch for sure. And in fact, he does a lot of stuff like that. So, have you ever baked a cake? How many ingredients did you use? Well, for most cakes, it takes eggs, sugar, flour, salt, and usually several other ingredients. In like manner, it takes several different ingredients or traits to maintain responsible character. And we mentioned one of them a minute ago, honesty, and of course responsibility in itself is one of those traits that forms and develops. You have to develop it into a positive moral character. And you look at the little picture there in the teacher's manual, and it shows, a bowl and the ingredients: determination, discipline, sacrifice, consistency, self-control, delayed gratification. All of this goes into that bowl, that mix of maintaining a responsible character, all right? The main ingredient that you'd want to be putting in there, the big package in the box, take it out, pour it in, is self-control. That's the main ingredient. That is the start of the Peaceful Solution. I mean, when we start out with the books, it starts out with character, the character unit, to explain to us what character is. Then, here we go. We're starting off into it, and we get in there, and we start learning about self-control and acceptance and respect, and end up with a responsibility. But self-control is the foundation of a great moral character, and that's what it's saying right here. It's the main ingredient. In fact, I have a self-control diagram here for you. If you want to look at the, I know we can't really read it. It's a little fuzzy. Let me see if we can zoom in there a little bit on that thing. There we go. Okay, the self-control diagram. Notice it's a continual thing here, this circle. And, all this stuff goes together. It works completely together. And like, for instance, there's an incident or a trigger. Okay, here's the starting point. It's like a game or something. You could put your little thing right there, the little car, the little man or something right there, and you move to incident or trigger, okay? We ought to make a game like this for sure, but incident or trigger, and so then, you roll the dice or whatever and figure out what is your incident or your trigger going to be. Well, it's not that simple. This is something that's formed within you all your life. There's going to be an incident or something, some type of trigger, something that triggers this process to start. And what we do about it from here, and also we can change those triggers and so forth and how we deal with these things. But what's going to occur is that trigger is going to go, and then all of a sudden, you move your little man over here to the thought arrow, over to the thoughts. And now this is where you really need to start paying attention to this, okay? Now, hopefully, after we've been in the Peaceful Solution for some time, learning the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, the incidences or triggers that used to, trip our trigger, or as they say, there's many different sayings, but hopefully we've gotten some of those and kind of put them aside and learned how to deal with them and are a little more patient along the way. But we get to this thing called thoughts. Now, this is where you start thinking about it, and that dirty, rotten sucker, I can't believe he did that or said that to me. Or, man, that person just bumped my car and knew I was standing right here and didn't even say nothing about it. Or, that guy, what did he mean by what he just said? And you start letting these thoughts get carried away. Well, what occurs next? Let's move our little man right here to this one in our game. And now we're at feelings, right? All this is synergistic. It all goes together. So now we're at feelings. This is where you better latch on to it and get some self-control. Because if you let your thoughts get out of hand, it feeds what you already have in you. And from the heart, you start getting all these feelings about, bad feelings, could be great feelings, whatever, but these feelings start coming forth. Now, at that point, we need to check out our actions, because just like with your tongue, if you open your mouth and start lollygagging it and letting it just run on, I don't care if it's something you're really glad about and thankful about. You don't want to let everybody know that you just inherited, $1 million or something. If you open your mouth and start telling everybody that, you're going to have everyone coming up to you wanting money and phone calls and everything else. You're going to be the butt of all kinds of scams and everything. Next thing you know, you're going to be more broke than you were when it started out. So you definitely don't want to open your mouth, even if it's something that you might be joyful about, And you don't want to run your tongue when you're angry about something, because you're not thinking about it. You're letting the emotions flow through your mouth, and it's just uncontrolled. You're saying things you really don't want to say. You're saying them in a manner you shouldn't be saying them, and you're really not going to get anything through to anybody like that. It doesn't work that way. No one's going to listen to some raging fool. You've got to sit back, let it all calm down, and then try to talk logically about things. So you get control of your feelings, and whether you do or don't get control of your feelings, you move to the action arrow right there, move our little man to the action arrow, and we get that letting the tongue wag, or hitting somebody, or throwing something against the wall, or running your car into a tree just because you're mad at somebody. I've known people that do stupid things like that, and they're mad at someone, so they just run their car into a wall or break the windshield out or something. what did that do to the other person? I mean, I can't figure it out. But then after those actions, you got consequences or rewards based upon how you dealt with it. So we need to remember these things, that self-control is that main ingredient. And we're going to get to that. Don't worry. I've got another little flyer here I want you to see. And it talks about impulsive reactions can lead to irrational behavior. And this goes along with that trigger thing, the incident and trigger, and the thoughts and the feelings. And so these impulsive reactions, it says the lack of self-control leads to irrational responses. An irrational response occurs when we act on emotion without gathering the sufficient facts to make intelligent choices. Irrational behavior is triggered by negative thoughts. It causes feelings like jealousy, resentment, rage, etc. And anyone who responds that way is not using self-control. You can't just do anything that you want to do. It just doesn't operate that way. Some people think it does, but it's not. And, of course, at the bottom it says irrational behavior can lead to hurt feelings, loss of friendships, loss of jobs, loss of whatever you want. But back up there about halfway in that first paragraph, it says irrational behavior is triggered by negative thoughts and causes negative feelings. So the best thing I can tell you about controlling those negative thoughts is to have a positive attitude. Don't be pessimistic. We're getting to that. Don't worry, we're getting to that responsible character. This is all part of it, okay? But this is how you consistently do this, by using self-control. And these are some of the examples of using self-control and not using self-control and so forth, and what will help you to do so. I think number one out of the chute is really this right here. Look at the overhead. Okay, let me zoom that out a little bit. See that? Attitude is everything. With whatever attitude, now you can see the desk there and the studying. I think I recognize a couple of those books and everything, but to have the right, even when you sit down and study, you have to have the right attitude. You have to have the right attitude when you deal with other people. You have to have the right attitude when someone's correcting you about something. You have to have the right attitude if someone is screaming and yelling at you. You have to have the right attitude when you sit down to eat a meal, you know? Are you going to be optimistic or pessimistic? You have to have the right attitude when you go and wash the dishes. If you have a negative attitude about washing the dishes, you're probably not going to like doing it. You know, I can tell you from personal experience. Working on a house, working on a car, working on a speech, working on anything, you have to have the right attitude. Let's show that one more time. You have to have the right attitude to, let's show that one more time on the overhead. You have to have the right attitude to accomplish this task. Okay? Let's put that back over here for a minute. And so, speaking of optimism and pessimism and your thoughts, let's zoom in here a little. This is in the respect unit. And optimism, pessimism, and your thoughts. And it says, although thinking positively, see the smiley face on one side and the mean, angry face on the other side, you know? That's how you look at people. You can look at them and see it in their face if they got a sour attitude or if they're pessimistic about things. You can see it a lot of times, man. But although thinking positively is important to how you treat yourself and others, many people must learn how to be optimistic, positive thinkers. And it does take practice. You have to first decide that you want to be that type of person, you know, and you can tell, you can see how people walk, how they carry themselves. You can see that character that's part of them, that they're optimistic or pessimistic. Are they always complaining, or are they always looking at the brighter side of things, thinking, hey, we could do this another way, what have you. But being optimistic is a positive character trait that will enable you to expect the best possible outcome from a situation. Doesn't mean that you have to get upset if it doesn't come out the way you thought. In fact, if you're optimistic, even if it doesn't come out the way you expected, you can usually find, the bright side of the coin, or the right side of the coin, or the bright spot in the darkness or something, to deal with the situation. Optimistic people are hopeful and encouraging to themselves and others. Pessimism, on the other hand, is a negative character trait. You'll never be able to be optimistic if you're pessimistic. You'll never produce, and remember, the positive character traits, when we put them on a list, when the peaceful solution shows you a list of positive traits and it includes being optimistic or pessimistic as a negative, that means if you're pessimistic, you need to change that. You need to get rid of the things on the negative chart and increase the things on the positive chart. So we want to be optimistic. And most people have, they're kind of in between there somewhere. They're optimistic a lot of the time, but then they let pessimism sneak in. Or, I've run across people that are really pessimistic, like on everything, and it's hard for them to really bust off and even think optimistically about something. A pessimistic person will always see what's wrong with the situation. He usually has a problem with almost everything and jumps to conclusions without getting all the facts. That's when we get back to this thing about the incident or trigger and having negative thoughts, jumping to conclusions, and so forth. And it's not a great thing. Pessimistic people are negative thinkers. A pessimistic thinker has a tendency to feel badly about himself and the world around him. Now, don't get me wrong. Even an optimistic thinker is going to have people that disagree with him or don't see what he sees that he might be very optimistic about. Might be other people are not seeing it in that same light. But that doesn't mean that optimistic person has to immediately turn into a pessimist. You need to keep that optimism going, right? Pessimistic people are negative self-talkers, excuse me, and are more likely to find external ways to try to make themselves feel better. Yeah, nobody likes anything I do anyway. I'm just gonna go smoke a joint. I'm gonna go have a drink. Forget those guys. And a lot of times the pessimistic person is looking for someone to disagree with them or something not to go their way, so they have that excuse to be able to go and do that very thing. How do I know? I can tell you from experience. I no longer consider myself a pessimistic person, but at one time you could say that I really was. It was, woe is me. Everything in my life from the time I was a young child, that person didn't have to go through what I went through and everything, and I mean, just you name it. I had every excuse in the book to go out and do all the things that I did that were very negative and harmful in many different ways. But anyway, it's risky behavior too, or they get involved in risky behavior. And that's not great because a lot of people that have gotten involved in risky behavior have found out that, they didn't get another shot at it. They were involved in risky behavior and it took their life. Boom. One time out of the chute, just like that. Didn't even know it. I mean, they didn't even know what struck them. They didn't get that second shot, Some people have got that second opportunity and held on to it for a little while and then threw it away. I've known a lot of people like that too. And so in order to really make all this work, we have to be able to guard our minds. So many things that we deal with in the world around us, so many things that we deal with, and this is in Self-Control, page 11, I believe, but so many things we deal with, so many things we see and hear, and so many things that are available on our phone, on TV, on movies, whatever. It's hard to guard your mind if you're involved in these things. When you're seeing something, you have music telling you how to feel, the creepy music, and you're like, oh, something creepy's fixing to take place. I hope that person, look behind the door, so they got the music playing, letting you know how to think and act, right? Or the one where, something else is fixing to take place. Dun, 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 dun. It's training you. It's telling you how to feel, even through the music that they play. Even if you were looking at something that looked very harmless, that music in the background is taking you down a certain path that you probably don't want to go down. And then all of a sudden the joyful music comes on and everybody drives off into the sunset, in a convertible and everything, and great music playing, or so to speak. And, it's crazy. So guard your mind. Let's look at this. Guard your mind. Another key concept in developing this self-control that's much needed as the main ingredient and responsibility begins with your thoughts. It's very easy to say, I just did it, I wasn't thinking, but just as we saw in the previous diagram, remember the synergistic diagram right here, where it all goes in a big circle and works together? Just as you saw, we're always thinking. Thoughts enter our minds at the speed of light. Thoughts about ourselves, others, things we need to accomplish, things we want. These thoughts then lead to feelings, which can lead to behavior. It's no surprise that sad thoughts make you feel sad. And so, if you look down there where it's underlined, it says, up to you to determine if your thoughts can help you build your character or if they can lead to choices that you're going to regret. It's up to you, based upon those thoughts. Are they hot thoughts or cool thoughts? The cool thoughts are going to lead you to better emotional feelings, which lead to a better choice of actions, which leads to a better outcome, okay? So let's keep that in mind. Let's remember our thoughts, are they positive or are they negative? Excuse me. All right. I'm probably not going to, I wanted to show you something else there. We might get to it here. Let's go ahead and turn on page 78. Let's start out there. It says main ingredient, self-control. So in the previous chapters, you learned that by practicing self-control, which is the ability to stop, think, and weigh the consequences of your actions, or if you'd like, you can see the sign right here. I like to bring that out every now and then when we're talking about self-control. It says to, think of it as a stop sign. Stop, think about what's taking place. Stop, stop screaming or whatever you're doing, and stop and think, okay, what's going on here? I'm just being a fool. No one's going to listen to me. Or, no, I don't want to. I feel like going and breaking that windshield. I don't want to do that. Or I'm going to throw this bottle against the wall. Well, what benefit would that be? Stop and think. What benefit would it be? Consider your options, proper options, the right thing, the things you learn with the peaceful solution, the character traits, the positive character traits that you learn, and being a positive individual. Consider those options and then proceed with the right choice. You're not always going to make the right choice, okay? You can get to a point to where you're really making mostly the right choice. Probably not going to hit it 100% all along the way unless you're like, perfect, okay? And you should strive to get there. You should strive to be perfect in your ability to control yourself. There's no doubt about that. I find where occasionally, and I think the other teachers that come up here and teach the teacher certification course tell you the same thing. No matter how hard we try, no matter how much we know, no matter how much we've taught it, occasionally we make a mistake or even a bad choice. And there's a difference between a mistake and a bad choice. A mistake is one you did accidentally. You see what you consider to be a sugar container there while you're baking that character cake, while you're baking the cake, and you reach over and pick it up, and it turns out to be salt, and you pour a whole bunch of salt in there, right? Nothing wrong with a little bit of salt. In fact, I highly encourage everybody to use plenty of salt, but you might not want as much as you were going to put sugar in a cake, That's a mistake, all right? So, and some people might want more salt than they do sugar, but that's okay too. That's personal choice. And so but that would be a mistake in some people's minds. Like I said, it's all choice, but a bad choice is one where you could have made the right choice, one that would not hurt yourself, others, or property or the environment, and you chose to do something different because you felt differently about it. You had feelings you couldn't control, or you weren't going to let that person talk to you that way, or you're going to get back at them or whatever, you know. And so you're making a choice to do something that is not right. And guess what? We all do it. You know, I guarantee you I'm not perfect. We all do it. The difference is when we do make one of these bad choices, and if we make a mistake, either one, we have the opportunity, and the Peaceful Solution teaches us this, that we can go back and look at what we've done. We can rewalk our day and check out everything we've done, our day, our week, whatever, and we can make notes to ourselves on what we need to correct, and we can go about correcting those things. We can set our mind in advance not to make that same mistake again. You probably will, but you know, we can set our mind in advance to do better at it and be determined to do it right. Don't kick ourselves too hard. You know, you can kick yourself a little bit while you're making the notes, you know, but then quit kicking, okay? Being negative to yourself does not help. You know, having a negative attitude about yourself does not help. If you're calling yourself stupid and you're an idiot and all that, well, you know, you're internalizing those things, and, you know, it kind of takes hold a little bit, you know, so you got to stop doing that. Anyway, so back to the stopping and thinking and weighing the consequences of our possible actions. You can make responsible choices. See that word choices? And then responsible ones, being a responsible person, having that great, positive, optimistic, wonderful, peaceful solution character. Self-control can be used to maintain your positive character as well. In fact, you have to have it. In fact, self-control is to responsibility as a foundation is to a house. You have to build upon that self-control. Because without self-control, without that discipline, without it, no matter how many times you say to yourself that I'm not going to do that again, if you don't have self-control, you're going to keep doing that same thing over and over again. You have to practice self-control. If someone lacks self-control, he or she will not make responsible choices. When it comes to maintaining your positive character, you have to constantly, there's that word, you know, constantly be on guard to stop and think carefully. So constantly. Man, really? Constantly? Come on now. You mean all the time? I don't get a break? No. Constantly. That's what it says. You constantly do it. You're going to make mistakes, but, you know, constantly be on guard to stop and think carefully before making decisions that will cause moral dilemmas. And a moral dilemma, you know, people get involved in things, and then they have all these problems, and then they want someone to get them out of these problems, right? They go to a counselor or someone well trusted, and they start laying all this on them and say, you know, everything's just falling apart around me, and I can't do this, I can't do that. They repoed my car, now I can't get around, and oh, you know, my house, the plumbing is horrible in it, you know, and I know I should have taken care of that clog a long time ago, or that leak or whatever, and they just have all this stuff piling up all the time. And it'll just wear you out even listening to it. But in most cases, it's not because someone ran into their house or their car or dropped a bomb on them or something. It's because they lacked the responsibility and the self-control to maintain their possessions and their positive character. So I'm not saying that I'm not empathetic to people's problems that they're having. Don't go there. That's not the case at all. I don't mind, you know, thinking about what someone else has been through and try to walk a mile in their shoes, so to speak, and have empathy towards that person. Notice I didn't say sympathy. Sympathy is another thing altogether. That's when you actively agree with that person. I mean, you know, oh, they repoed my car. Those guys at that car lot or that bank or whatever, they're such idiots, and on and on and on. When all the time he didn't make his payment, right? And so if you're sympathetic with the guy, you're agreeing that, yeah, those bankers, they got no heart, and that's just joining in with his stupidity and not maintaining, not practicing self-control, and not maintaining the great character that everybody has a little bit of. Nobody's totally void of it. But when these situations arise that that your parents, guardians, supervisors, counselors, friends, close friends that you trust in would not approve, stop and consider the consequences of your actions. Never rush into following the crowd, which could consist of one person or many. And the point is, don't make decisions without thinking about the consequences just because others are doing it. And, we have the, excuse me, we have the clip down there at the bottom of the page, if you've got your book, and it has 3 young men standing there, and one of them says, hey, you want to hang out at Phil's house with us since his parents aren't at home? What does that usually lead to, and here's the other young man standing there thinking, to do or not to do. No thanks, I'll catch you guys later. I'm out of here. I'm going home where my parents are at home, and I'm going to go there. I don't want to go there and get in trouble with you guys, because it can lead to a bad situation without adult supervision. Okay, so we've talked about the main ingredient being self-control and maintaining this responsible character. And I wanted to, it's the wrong page. Had it on the wrong page. Okay. So this is back at self-control again. I had the wrong page there. I apologize. Might get there. Okay. All right, this is it. So I wanted to point out one more time on that emotions, that to keep that responsible character and practicing self-control, how important it is on emotions. If you'll go to the overhead there. What are emotions? And it shows us the different faces of emotions right there. See it? You might recognize a couple of those faces and be able to describe what it is. But emotions are strong physical and mental responses triggered by what we experience. A trigger is something that starts a process. Remember the diagram? The synergistic diagram right there with everything that kind of works together, and it just follows that whole circle right there. So emotions are triggered by what we hear, see, smell, taste, touch, and think, and triggers can affect what we feel almost instantaneously. I mean, we could bust off and do something stupid like almost right away. But our brain processes millions of pieces of information per second. Emotions can occur without conscious thought and within a split second of the event that triggered them. Okay? So you got to remember that when you're wanting to develop any of the positive character traits, including the positive character trait of responsibility. You have to be responsible to be able to have that ability to respond, the response ability, to respond properly, to have that ability to respond properly, to have responsibility. Get it? Works together there? All right. I know some of y'all got that. Responsible, Okay. So, another thing about responsibility that I wanted to read to you is that a responsible person takes his obligations seriously and works towards getting them accomplished. So your obligations, the things that you have agreed to, the things that you've been assigned, a job or whatever, they're your obligations, and you take it seriously and work towards getting them accomplished to the best of your ability. And that shows an optimistic, positive attitude right there in wanting to get that done and get it done to the best that you can do it. When a responsible person is given a task, he always completes it to the best of his ability and in a timely fashion. A responsible person will also take the initiative to complete assigned tasks without reminders. Now, it takes a little bit to get to that point. Some people have their minds just going 100 million miles an hour, and they've got a lot of things going on and everything, and they need reminders. But it doesn't have to be reminders from someone else. You can remind yourself by, everyone in here has probably got a phone, right? You can put a reminder on your phone. Yeah, some people just want to throw them against the wall sometimes. Yeah, you can put reminders on your phone to help you remember your obligations. You can make notes to yourself and put them in your top pocket or something on an index card. Reminders, little reminders on the things that you need to do. What was that I needed to do today? Man, it was something, oh yeah. Take the card out. There it is right there. Or your phone. For example, if your chore is to wash dishes, now why did they name that one? If your chore is to wash dishes, then you can show that you're responsible, David, by consistently washing the dishes without being told to do it. A responsible person is also accountable for his actions. When you are accountable for your actions, you readily admit that you have made a mistake and accept the consequences of your choices without blaming others for your decisions. A person who is accountable for his actions can learn from his mistakes. And by fulfilling your obligations and being accountable for your actions, you show maturity. You also gain the trust and respect of being a person others can count on. Some other character traits that go along with being responsible is being compassionate, being empathetic towards others, being thankful. It'll help you to be responsible, to have responsibility by being thankful for the things that you do have and the efforts that others put into things too, and pointing that out to them. Being optimistic, we've already talked about that a lot. And one thing you got to have to get all this together is humility. That's a great positive character trait, is being humble, not being hard-headed and stubborn-willed and not willing to learn, thinking you know it all. And I think we all have areas in humility that we need to adjust in. But being humble, working at it, trying your best to be that way. We're probably not going to get to the next page. C is for consistent, and it's all about discipline. That's going to be for the next teacher. I have an idea that the next teacher is going to be probably Catan. It's very possible it could be William again, but I think it's probably going to be Catan on Sunday the 31st at 5:30 p.m. Sunday the 31st at 5:30 p.m. And we might just have a mystery teacher. So join us, and we look forward to seeing you. One last thing I do want to point out. You can keep this in mind for the next class, because whoever is teaching it will go back over the number 3, probably the lesson plan number 3, just to mention it again, since they'll be on page 78. They might even do a little recap of what we've been over the last few pages. But you can be thinking about that consistency. C is for consistency, for consistent, okay? Keep it in your mind and understand that it's all about discipline. To practice self-control, you have got to have the discipline to be able to do so. All right, last thing I want to say to you, other than that, remember, of course, the 31st at 5:30 p.m. is our next class. Look at that overhead right there, and let's look at that thing. Okay, the end result of internalizing positive character traits, that's all of what we're talking about, that can be clearly seen in your actions and attitudes. Remember, you can see it on a person. You can see that great character, how they carry themselves. That some people call it a certain spirit. They say, man, that guy's got a great spirit, And so that's what some people call it. But anyway, the end result of all this is being a person of integrity. so you can be called and be known as a person of integrity. People can rely on you. They can trust in you. They respect you, of course, but they also honor you. And all these things, they have put you in a high place of honor. And so until the next class, we look forward to seeing you again. Like I said, the next teacher will be Katan or William. And so thank you for being here tonight. All of you online, continue to study, go back and look at some of this stuff, and thank you very much. See you next time.